This is Dueling Pistols, where history draws first and legends never die. No fluff, no filters, just raw stories of grit, blood, and legacy. Triggered by Black Flag. I don't know, man. It's a very outlandish story from my perspective, being attacked by wolves, but, you know.
It happened during World War I. The Germans and the Russians had to take a ceasefire and cap a bunch of wolves because they were jacking them in the middle, but again, middle of winter, nothing to eat.
Also, Siberia and North America are a little different.
Different critters.
Hey friends, this episode is part of a 26-part run for our new podcast, Dueling Pistols. If you like it, be sure to subscribe to the new feed wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our new Dueling Pistols YouTube channel. Because once this 26-part Boone series is finished, we won't be posting any future Dueling Pistols episodes here. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined today by my brother, Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, and I'm really excited.
Okay, we're back. We're back into the book, The Story of Daniel Boone. We're in the book Boone, a biography written by Robert Morgan. Those that have been following along for a while, you ought to know where we're at. Boone just got caught by Indians. He's in Kentucky. They had found their way through the Cumberland Gap or the Appalachian Mountains. They're in largely uncharted territory. The Shawnee catch him.
They had a year-long idol before that.
That's right. IDYLL. There's a new word for you, which is an idyllic, dreamy...
It's an idea of like a picturesque or like a scene life that also is unsustainable, and you have to know that it's unsustainable. So it's almost a season.
Yeah.
Like you go idle for a season.
Yeah. It's not spelled like idle, like your car at idle or you're being idle or something like that. Although... this is being idle or doing, I don't know. It's a strange wording. But anyway, the point is Captain William Emery, who is actually the Indian chief of the Shawnee that captured them, he makes Daniel Boone, go and grab all the furs and all the skins and all the hides, all the bounty that the explorers have been gathering for over a year and a half. Almost.
All the furs, all the salt that they packed.
Everything, their guns, weapons, everything. And the Indians took it all. And they said, Boone, we're going to let y'all go. Don't ever come back, though, because this is our land. This is the Indian land.
And if you ever come back, we'll kill you.
They said this. What he said was the hornets. No,
if you come back, the hornets and the wasps
will sting you. That sounds ominous, by the way. So anyway.
What is a wasp in this context?
Yeah.
An arrow?
Yeah. So, they shake hands and the party's like, okay, I think we better get going home. And who was it? It was the other guys in the party, Mooney, Holder, Cooley, Finley. They're all like, dude, let's go back to North Carolina. Screw this. I'm done. Everything they'd worked for the past year and 3 months or so is gone, up in smoke.
Could you think about that? I'm with them. I'm in that boat. I'm demoralized. Indians stole all my stuff. I've been busting my ass for over a year. Yeah, I get that.
But Daniel and his brother-in-law, John the Badass Stewart, said, you know what? No, I want my horses back, at least.
That's my favorite horse.
So they are in the process of, where we left off last, they're in the process of, stealing.
Because they have to walk
horses
back otherwise if they don't get the horses.
Yeah, I don't think they care that much about walking, actually. They just can't haul a lot of stuff.
That's why they have a lot of stuff.
I mean, having been on horseback or walked, I prefer walking. It's just I don't prefer walking with a load.
I get that.
It says, Boone and Stewart started out after the Shawnees and caught up with them in a few days. They watched the Indian camp until the small hours of the night, then crept to the clearing where the horses were hobbled and took 4 or 5 of the mounts, among them an Indian pony.
Have you ever hobbled a horse?
Yes.
What does that entail? Like, I've heard of it, but I don't know what hobbling is.
There's different ways to do it, but basically you tie their feet together.
Okay, that's what I thought.
There's different ways, like cushioned cuffs or just a rope, or there's lots of ways to hobble. But basically what you do is you put that on the horses so they just don't go very far. They just have to shuffle. That way you don't have to have a fence or tie them up or anything, and they can just kind of shuffle on 2 legs and eat a bunch, and they stay fairly close by.
Smart.
For a day and night, Boone and Stewart rode south toward Station Camp. But on the second day, this is after they stole the horses, so a full day and a full night, they rode south toward their camp, where they had their station camp, which is then on the route through the Cumberland Gap and back to North Carolina. But on the second day, as they were resting themselves and their horses, they heard a rumbling of hoofbeats. And suddenly the Shawnees rode out of the woods upon them. "Steal horse, huh?" one of the Shawnees said, and they threatened Boone and Stewart with tomahawks. They laughed and mocked the white men for being so clumsy. They took a bell from a horse and put it on Boone and made him dance and prance around the clearing while they laughed at him. And then they took their prisoners and horses and started north again. This episode shows Boone with his guard down. Since they had not seen any Indians in the first 7 months in Kentucky, he was not taking the necessary precautions. And after stealing the horses, he and Stewart made no effort to cover their tracks. They hoped to outrun the Shawnees, or assumed the Indians would write off the loss of the horses and continue on to their villages.
They got nothing better to do?
I think they got too much ego for that. Mm-hmm. They got too much ego for that.
Well, they let the guy go, and they told him, "You get out of here now. Get out of my backyard." Mm-hmm. And what's he doing? He's dipping his hand in the cookie jar.
As the Shawnees and their captives began the march north again, Boone and Stewart submitted gracefully to their fate. Boone later said he was pretty sure they could escape if they were patient. On their part, the Shawnees seemed more amused than angry with their prisoners. Again, this sort of friendly banter, you thought you were going to get away with this, this sort of back and forth between rivals. They don't want to get rid of their rival. They're making life exciting, like this is interesting. It's like, there's something going on here. And it says every day they hinted that the next day Boone and Stewart would be freed. But when the next day came, they continued their journey toward the Ohio. This typical Indian trick. We're going to let you go just, one more day together. We're going to let until you're so far in, you ain't going anywhere. At night, Boone and Stewart were not bound, but each was forced to sleep between two Indians.
Really? Sleep tight, bud.
Yeah. On the seventh day, when they were almost within sight of the Ohio River, the band camped beside a thick canebrake between the lower Blue Licks and the mouth of Cabin Creek on La Belle Riviere. While the Indians were gathering wood for the cooking fires and hobbling the horses, Daniel signaled to Stewart it was time to escape. Each grabbed a gun and powder and lead and plunged into the cane before their captors realized what was happening. They grabbed a gun, powder, and lead and jumped into the canebrake.
Yeah.
Now, if you're an Indian, if they ran in there without guns, you're a lot more bold.
That's a good move.
Right? I mean, if you run in there with a gun, now they have to consider whether or not this is worth it or not. I mean, really, like, it's a whole different ballgame. Mm-hmm. It says it was getting dark, and the Indians secured the horses to prevent them from being stolen. They acted reluctant to enter the canebrake to search, for the cane was thick and it was already getting dark. And they had guns now.
Yeah.
Boone and Stewart inched their way through the stalks and then into the forest. Walking all night, guided by the stars, they made it back to their old camp in about 24 hours of continuous walking.
Okay, lesson learned. We don't take breaks. Awesome.
But station camp had been abandoned. Though warm ashes from a campfire indicated someone had only just left, Boone and Stewart, without pausing, followed Finley and the others south and overtook them on the Rock Castle River. After a dash of almost 100 miles, Boone was pleased to find that his brother Squire had arrived with much needed new supplies and a friend named Alexander Neely. According to Filson's account, Boone was overjoyed at seeing his brother and exhilarated by his escape from the Shawnees. Our meeting so fortunately in the wilderness made us reciprocally sensible of the utmost satisfaction. Lots of words. So no one has ever explained why Squire Boone, 10 years younger than Daniel, so at this time Daniel's 35, he's 25, why he chose to look for his brother at this time in the middle of winter, or how he was able to find Boone. It is clear that Squire was an accomplished woodsman himself. According to some reports, he and Neely had failed to find Boone, and Squire was devastated, heading back to Cumberland Gap and the settlements. That's his brother. It is quite possible that Squire had been sent out by Richard Henderson to find and resupply Boone and his party and to bring back the furs and hides they had accumulated. Again, it's almost providential. Like, the odds of Squire being there. It's just,
it's funny. So, Indian William guy, what's his name?
William Emery. Captain William Emery.
There it is. Captain Will.
The one who captured them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he's half white.
Not surprised.
Yeah. He's half white. And he has a bunch of different names, but it looks like his Indian name is Bullfrog. And then he had his white name from his parents. His father was a soldier, and they call him Captain Will, the half-breed Will of Naquas, and also Longfellow. He was really tall.
Interesting. It's interesting, too, because...
I wonder if that had anything to play.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because certainly being part of both worlds, maybe the Indian chief had a softer heart toward Boone. Interesting.
That sounds like him and a couple of his family members married white people.
Makes sense. Somehow Squire, his little brother, shows up with Neely and horses and supplies to sort of get Boone and Stewart out of the country, because they weren't with that original group. It says, since Squire was usually in debt as much as Daniel, it is unlikely he funded the mission himself. Archibald Henderson would state positively it was Richard Henderson who sent Squire to Kentucky.
For guys who can make guns on the frontier, how are they poor? They just don't like making guns?
It's all you have to do to be poor is to spend more than you make. And anyone can do that. Finley and the three others were determined to return to North Carolina, but Boone and Stewart were equally determined. Now that Squire had arrived with fresh supplies to stay and hunt to make up some of the losses that they had to the Shawnees, Brent, if Boone was deeply in debt back on the Yadkin, and evidence suggests that he was, then he had all the incentive to stay through the winter and keep hunting.
Why go back and get arrested? Might as well.
Yeah, why go back at all? I mean, we got all this gear now. Let's just go back out.
Throw down another idol.
And let's catch up. Says Beaverskins probably offered his only real hope of paying off his creditors. Much as he may have missed Rebecca and his children, he had other calls to duty to heed. And he had his intelligence on the land of Kentucky to gather and compile. It's like a hunt you've gone on. I got to tell you, I've been on hunts, Lampers and I. We go someplace. We do okay. But man, we're like, if we could do this over again, change the dates just a little bit, bring a little bit different gear, go through this, start the hunt on this canyon ridge. The two giants that got away, we generally kind of know where they're at. Second time in, third time in, we're crushing. You just have that urge to go back and get a do-over. Now that you know so much about an area, it makes you so much more dangerous and capable. So it says, so what it says is that Squire and Neely agreed to stay. Now there's four of them, right? Squire to stay and help with the hunt only, and that only confirmed his decision. So when Squire and Neely, they bumped into him, and he was kind of ready to go back because they had nothing left. But then Squire and Neely brought all these supplies and horses. They're like, yeah, we'll go hunt for a year or whatever and trap. Okay, sure. And so they just continued on and decided they would go. Boone never saw John Finley again, though.
He never saw John Finley again?
Never saw John Finley again. Remember, John Finley had enough. Along with the other fellas.
So he's just like, I'm done in the frontier?
And they left the Carolinas, remember? And meanwhile, Boone and Stewart are going to go try to steal back horses, and they go through that debacle. Well, they catch up with the crew going through the gap, but they also run into his brother. And so at that point, the rest of them continue on to North Carolina, and the four of these other guys, Squire, Daniel, John, and Neely, decide they're going to stay. But yeah, he never saw John Finley again. Basically, it's thought that Finley was killed by Indians while on another trading trip. This book says 1771. Others say it was 69. It was the same year he came through the gap back to the Carolinas. He'd only been home for a year, less than a year, and he disappeared.
So he ditched Boone because he was afraid of going back because of the Indians. Then he died most likely to Indians a year later.
Yes.
Oh man.
In like Pennsylvania. or in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Like in the settlements.
That's messed up.
That is messed up. We don't really know. Look up Finley. It says John Finley was one of the first non-Indians to travel into the Trans-Appalachian frontier in the years prior to the French and Indian War, which we established, where he got caught by the Shawnee and then later released. His trip through the Cumberland Gap with Boone was in 1769, and it helped establish that route. They're paving the way for now people to pour through the gap. This rich guy, Henderson, he has a special interest in getting through the gap before anyone else and establishing a whole new state even, to become like mega millionaire. Basically, he pretty much was one of those leading people with Boone. I mean, he's the one that was there before Boone, showed Boone where to go. It says that after he returned to Kentucky, or he returned to North Carolina through the gap from Kentucky, he had returned to his life as a frontier trader, but he died in the wilderness sometime not long after that expedition.
Sad.
Yep. So they never saw each other again. Boone, the last time. So they were close friends, obviously, and they had planned and they were kind of the brains behind the whole thing in the first place.
Yeah.
But Finley did say to Boone, I'm not so much a woodsman as a adventurer. He sells goods on the frontier and travels and trades, and he's kind of a vagabond a little bit. But he didn't like the whole Shawnee experience. He's like, I got caught once.
I'm out.
10 years ago, I'm done. That Irishman got gone. But disappeared somehow. But who knows? I mean, it's thought he was killed by Indians, maybe, or a grizzly bear, or he fell off a cliff, or he froze to death. I mean,
there's a lot of ways to die.
And you just don't know. Don't know. So it says, the streams of Kentucky were filled with beaver and beaver dams, with otters and mink. Even among such abundance, some skill was required in the preservation of fur. While beaver pelts are cut so they can be stretched out flat on hoops of grapevine or hickory withes, mink and otter skins are peeled off whole. I'm not a trapper, but there's different ways for each animal to be handled. It says in the winter of 1770, so when was that? That's a year later, roughly. A year later, in the winter of 1770, the Boone brothers, with Stewart and Neely, directed all their hopes and all their efforts toward trapping. They had a substantial supply of jerk and bear meat, dried buffalo tongues, and in the camp, they were warmed by buffalo robes and bear skins. At night, they slept with bare feet to the fire while moccasins and leggings dried.
I don't like that I'm looking up dried buffalo tongues right now.
It may have been in this period that they read by the campfire a copy of Gulliver's Travels.
Nice.
Which Neely had brought with him. In a deposition given years later in a land dispute, Boone described their habit of reading, saith that in the year 1770 I encamped on the Red River with 5 other men, and we had with us for our amusement the history of Samuel Gulliver's Travels, wherein he gave an account of his young mistress Glumdelclerk carrying him on a market day for a show to a town called Lulwagrud.
Come again?
I honestly have not read that book, Gulliver's Travels.
I don't think I've actually read the book, actually. I've seen an old cartoon of it.
It says it's not clear when Boone says this if he's referring to the 5 men who came with him to Kentucky in 69 or to the other hunters who may have joined him and Squire and Stewart on Neely. It doesn't say. As January turned into February, Squire and Neely hunted and walked the trap lines together while Boone and Stewart split up to cover separate territories, being already familiar with the region. So Boone and Stewart would go out alone, but Squire and Neely would go out in pairs because Squire and Neely, didn't have the knowledge of the country and all that kind of stuff. So they used the buddy system, but it looks like Boone...
Nothing wrong with the buddy system, folks.
Looks like Boone and Stewart just went out. They agreed to meet at camp every 2 weeks. They had made a small canoe out of bark for crossing the Kentucky River and to reach traps along the river and its branches. A hard winter rain began and continued for many days, and the river raged in flood. When the appointed day for their meeting came, Stewart did not appear. As the flood subsided, Boone crossed the river and found the remains of a campfire near a tree where Stewart's initials had been carved. There were no other signs of his friend. Boone vowed he would not return to North Carolina until he had found Stewart. They didn't use the buddy system. What do you think, Brent?
This is John Stewart, the brother-in-law. Indians.
The disappearance of Stewart was an intimidating mystery. He seemed to have vanished into the damp winter air. But 5 years later, while Boone and his crew were hacking out Boone's trace, the bones of a man were discovered in a hollow sycamore tree near the area where Stewart disappeared.
Dang it. Do they know what happened?
Boone examined the remains and found a powder horn with John Stewart's initials scratched on the brass band. The left arm had been broken, but the skull was intact. There was no sign of his rifle. Damn it.
So,
woulda, coulda, shoulda.
But it probably wasn't Indians then. They would have taken the powder horn.
The most likely explanation was that he had been attacked by Indians, was wounded, and lost his rifle. Fleeing into the woods, he found the hollow sycamore and hid. And there he had either frozen to death or bled to death. My father always thought that Stewart either got killed or sickened and died in the wilderness, Nathan told Draper. Alexander Neely was so shaken by the disappearance of Stewart that he decided to return to the settlements. After he was gone, the Boone brothers, committing themselves to a longer stay, still hoping to find Stewart, built a better shelter on the banks of the Kentucky River. Because keep in mind, they still don't know if he's dead or alive at this point.
They've been snatched by Indians twice now. It's very likely why not a third?
Having plenty of meat, they again directed their efforts toward gathering furs. Boone told Filson, who was the, I think one of the first authors of a biography, the first person that Boone told his stories to. He told him, "We were then in a dangerous, helpless situation, exposed daily to perils and death amongst the savages and wild beasts. Not a white man in the country, but just ourselves. Thus situated many hundred miles from our families in the howling wilderness, I believe few would have equally enjoyed the happiness we experienced."
He might be onto something.
Seriously, I think there's something about the constant threat of death that makes you feel very much alive, like on alert, paying attention, more acutely aware that today could be your last day than normal. Also, that these struggles in some ways are more human than the current civilization we live in today, which is so comfortable and decadent that it almost robs us of feeling alive. Takes adventure away from us almost. There's something to be said about the life he's living for sure. It says, by the time spring arrived and the trapping season came to an end, Boone and Squire had caught and cured a valuable stock of furs. I got to tell you, he loves John Stewart. That's his brother-in-law, basically as Boone's peer, like his equal, someone who is amazingly talented and skilled and capable and all those sorts of things.
It's a hunting buddy. Those are hard to come by.
It says they were running low on ammunition and supplies. It would have seemed the natural time to return to North Carolina in the Yadkin, but Boone decided that only Squire would take the pack horse carrying their treasures of furs, sell the harvest, and put in crops in North Carolina. He himself would stay in Kentucky to hunt deer and explore. There has been a good deal of speculation about Boone's decision to stay a second year in Kentucky. It would have seemed logical for him to have returned to his family in the spring, grow a crop of corn, and return to Kentucky in late fall. A number of motives for his staying in 1770 have been advanced. He was still avoiding creditors. He needed to make further explorations for Henderson. He felt guilty about Stewart and was trying to find his friends still. Others have said that the game was so plentiful that Boone could not tear himself away from the hunt. Any or all of these motives may have been factors in his decision to stay alone while Squire returned to the Yadkin. Likely there was still regions of Kentucky he needed to explore for his own satisfaction and his report to Henderson. But there may have been other reasons too, some hard to define. Now 35 years old, Boone had reached the age when a man of ambition and vision has to define himself. Frustrated by his failures at farming, in debt, unsuccessful, previously in reaching Kentucky, he could not give up now that he was finally there. He may have sensed that this was his moment, his destiny. In his mid-30s, a man either reaches out toward risk and glory or stays within the routines of the expected and the ordinary. It is the age when men leave safe homes and jobs and go on voyages, odysseys, performed transforming sacrifices. It is the age when Whitman wrote Leaves of Grass and Columbus started to plan his voyage to the Indies. It is the age at which visionaries become prophets or explorers or inventors or make fools of themselves trying. Putting behind him his accumulated failures and humiliations, such a man must seize the new prospect and ride with it to greatness or to defeat. There is no turning back. When Boone decided to stay alone in the forests of Kentucky while his brother Squire returned to conduct business, he made a choice that revealed himself to himself. He would not do what most other men would do. He would not be just a commercial trapper. He was that, but he was something else too. There was something he wanted to learn in the wilderness, and he needed to be alone. He had hunted alone before, for days and weeks, but what he needed to learn was here. He couldn't say exactly what it was, but he sensed the uniqueness of the opportunity. He had been given a role to play, the best role he had ever known, and he meant to make the most of it. He now proceeded to make those remarkable solitary explorations of Kentucky, which have given him immortality. Boone was a leader and an English-speaking colonial. He had been called a white Indian, and he was an expert marksman, scout, trapper, navigator of the forest. He was a woodsman, but there was more, and he knew he was seeking more. In the name of his people, and perhaps Richard Henderson as well, and his own nature, he was spying on the western wilderness as if there was a secret he must obtain. It was beyond the next ridge, and it was farther down the river of his days, the intelligence he must gather. 2 years may be the time it takes to leave one behind one's old self and see the world in a larger, clearer way. It would be the time Thoreau spent in his cabin at Walden, the definitive period of his life. It was the time Goethe spent in Italy in 1786 to 88, in a visit that transformed his vision of himself and his future. Some would have said it was fame Boone was seeking in Kentucky without quite knowing it, and they would not be entirely wrong, for fame was one facet of what he felt imminent inside himself. He wanted to be known across the reaches of geography, across the boundaries of time, but it was more than that, something sacred, almost like religion. It was something he shared with the Indians more than with white people. It was about his contemplation of the clouds over the grasslands and the wooded ridge and the sunset over the hurrying river. It was about how time would seem to stop even as the stars came out. He must play his part in the great curve of time. It was about the lay of the new land just waiting for him to seek and walk over it. Boone studied the different kinds of springs in the land and springs that boiled out of limestone. The cove springs deep in hollows, cave springs that issued out of caverns, salt springs surrounded by licks, sulfur springs. He studied the bones exposed in the raw salt licks. He must know this land as a man knows a beloved woman. He was determined to keep out of sight as he pursued his passion, and somehow he felt he was chosen. It was not just his decision after all. It was as if he had been separated out for this mission of relish and discovery. It was a moment that would never come again, not in his lifetime, not in 10,000 years, and he had been sent there and burdened with the desire to cherish it. There were other hunters and scouts with their eye on Kentucky and speculators greedy to claim it, but he was not responsible for them. His duty was to his mission. He had been called out as others are inspired to preach or nurse the sick or lead in battle. He would not tell anyone what it was, not even Richard Henderson, and he would keep his humor and wit and modesty, but he knew he had been given a sign and a window, and he must step across the threshold. Boone deliberately chose the peace of solitude rather than mingle in the wild wranglings and disputings of the society around him, from whom it was ever his first thought to be escaping, or he would never have penetrated to those secret places where later his name became talisman, wrote William Carlos Williams. It seems, like I said, providential, as if Boone had been set aside, in some sort of cosmic purpose here. It's like he felt in tune to that, He survived when others didn't. He stayed when others didn't. He was motivated and driven in a way when others aren't. You know, I told you, I think Boone died at 86 years old or something?
He was old. Yeah.
But look, Finley disappears.
Yep.
Stewart disappears. Who's next? You got Squire and Neely out there. Who else? Squire's little brother. Does he make it?
Don't tease me like that. That's mean. I don't know.
You have a lot going on, right? Like there's a lot. He has his own kids. People,
got a wife.
People, at that time, what was, maybe 30 years old or something was Finley? 35, same age as Boone, maybe. They're short lives, man. You're living on the edge, but yet Boone still makes it. Like, it's uncanny.
Time and time again.
It reminds me of an old buck.
They just have something extra.
It's like an old buck, when he's young, he gets lucky.
True.
There's a bit of luck. Like when he should have got killed, he somehow didn't.
Yeah. The person trying to kill him or animal messed up. It's normally what happens.
It's almost like
killer error.
Enough of those accidents or those like lucky fortuitous moments allow a man to then get wiser for the next time. Captain Emery didn't murder him. Didn't kill him out there. The Indians didn't execute him. The Shawnee let him go.
The first time or the second time?
Or the second time. Well, the second time they escaped on their own. We don't know what the Shawnee planned.
Yeah.
You get lucky and maybe you are set aside. Maybe there's divine providence involved. One way or another, though, you get to a point when you're someone like an old buck, when you're like Boone or you're like an old buck where you start to figure things out and you stop making those mistakes that you narrowly escaped before. And you get wiser, smarter. You can predict the future a little bit. You know how to handle yourself in certain situations. If this happens the second time, this is what I'll do. This is where I'll camp. This is how I'll hide my tracks and so on.
Or I'll never go to this area.
Yeah. Like you figure that stuff out. Boone's getting to that age now. And then when you solo hunt, changes you. It's so different than hunting with people and in a group. All that alone time, the stealthiness that you possess, you develop as there's no one telling you when, like there's no other external pressure. There's just you. You move at your own pace. The patience grows, in my opinion.
I think most people are scared to spend massive amount of time alone. It's terrifying to a lot of people.
Yeah. But then it becomes addictive. You crave hunts by yourself, days by yourself, days hunting by yourself. There's just something about it that's so refreshing.
So I always, whenever I go I go for out hunting for a week or two and I unplug, I come back and I have that reset. Would you say that's amplified when you're solo hunting? Are you more recharged or more reset by hunting solo than with a partner?
I think when you hunt solo and you come back, you are more self-sufficient. You feel more independent. You feel more capable. You feel more resilient. Look, you had only yourself to rely on. You did the thing. You made it happen. You get all the glory. You get all the failure. There's nothing else to blame it on. And when you come back from a successful trip, and sometimes for some people, it's just being there for 10 days straight. Maybe you didn't harvest an animal, but you stayed the days. You didn't come home on day 6, day 3 when you got wet and cold or when the grizzly walked by. There's just something about it, I think, that just toughens a man or woman, makes them more resilient, makes them more capable, more confident in their normal life. I think you always feel a sense of gratitude for modern life when you leave the wilderness. It's a double-edged sword. There's a sense of gratitude, like when I turn on the shower and hot water comes out, when I lay in a warm bed, when the lights just come on, I just flip a switch, when the room is temperature controlled and it's no longer -10 that I'm contending with. I'm not hiking and climbing, I'm relaxing and eating a pizza. There's a lot to go, wow, this is amazing. The world I live in is amazing. The modern world is amazing. And then you get on the internet and you do a little bit of scroll through maybe socials and you're like, modern civilization sucks. I want to go back. I want to experience the misery. I want to, it's like it develops a sense of gratitude for what we have, but it also awakens you to the waste of time that a lot of modern life can be. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about it for hours, but I want to get through this section of the book here. It says that Boone told Filson that after Squire left him on May 1, 1770, he was tempted to plunge into a deep melancholy because he was alone. Mm-hmm. And John Stewart, he didn't know where he was. Probably his closest and dearest friend, like since forever. He was without salt, sugar, bread. That is rough. I don't think you realize, like, when you're without salt or sugar, like a little bit of carbs, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, when we're in the wilderness like that and you're burning calories and stuff, there's just something about, you know, salt and sugar that are just like heaven sent at certain times. And he had no companions, not even a horse or a dog. The idea of a beloved wife and family and their anxiety upon the account of my absence made sensible impressions on my heart. 1,000 dreadful apprehensions presented themselves to my view and had undoubtedly disposed me to melancholy if further indulged. So he was fighting what, you know, a lot of times I have hunters who follow my other podcasts and they come along and they say, how do you do it? How do you stay out there? You know, I traveled all the way from, you know, Virginia to go do a hunt in Montana. And I had planned 14 days for this hunt or 10 days for this hunt. And by day 5, I went home. Like, the melancholy got to me. The loneliness got to me. I started to question, why am I here? What am I doing this for? And I quit. And I go home and they're then like, what the heck? Why did I quit? I looked forward to this all year. I planned this whole thing and it got hard and I quit, you know, and it tells people a little bit about themselves. And they often write to me and they ask, what happened? Explain this to me, you know? And it's actually, I don't think that difficult to explain. It happens to every human, and including Daniel Boone. He's sitting here saying to Filson, like, when my brother left and I was alone, I didn't have good food. I didn't have a horse. I didn't have a dog. I had no companions, no one to talk to. That he said he worried about his family, like constantly, his wife, so much apprehension. And that's usually when I'm out with a hunter that decides to cut out, go home. It's like, oh, I'm really worried about my kids and my wife. And I feel like I just got to get back home. And there's something happening there psychologically, emotionally, physically, perhaps, where the draw to go home is so much. And here Boone is saying that this is all in his mind, and 1,000 dreadful apprehensions presented themselves into my view and had undoubtedly disposed me to melancholy if further indulged. So if he kept reinforcing those fearful thoughts, those anxiety thoughts, and focus on those thoughts, then the inevitable result would be quitting. Philosophers of the sublime have long stressed the combination of delight and fear. The most intense experiences, indeed, the sublime itself, is a mingling of terror and joy. The danger of the Kentucky wilderness intensified Boone's relish for its wonders. You know, I think I mentioned this before. Was it Jeremiah Johnson in The Crow Killer? He said, I wouldn't want to live here anymore on this earth or in this wilderness if I had to live here without the constant threat of Indians trying to kill me. Like, he wanted the constant threat of Indians trying to kill him in his life. Like, the idea of not that threat took all the joy out of being out there.
No. It doesn't make sense. I understand the thrill and the being alive, and the only thing I could possibly relate this to is like veterans. They come back from war and stuff, and they complain about not being in combat, not being able to feel alive sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that's really the only like thing I really have to put towards that.
I mean, it's something worth thinking about, right? I mean, and he's not the only one. Jeremiah Johnson, he says it, and a bunch of other men say it, where the idea of living here without the Indian people being here too, and us competing for resources and not being on the same land, it just takes the struggle of life just disappears. It becomes such a boring, slow, And I mean, honestly, that's in our DNA. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't be alive today. There's a portion of our DNA that says, yeah, put me in danger. Let's see if I can get away from it. Let's see if I can win in the face of danger.
Let's see if I can jump this canyon in this hoopty. You know, like I
There's that too.
Now that you mention it,
Yeah.
I got a couple of things I could pull up. Maybe, yeah. Maybe I see this.
I think I can jump the Grand Canyon on this motorcycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things like that.
If you got a big enough ramp.
So it says, as the summer continued, Boone ran so low on powder and lead, he had to give up hunting for hides and hunt only for subsistence. This provided him with an excuse to devote more time to exploration. In these weeks and months, he appears to have crossed all the land from the Licking River west to the Ohio at the falls. It was the most beautiful part of Kentucky, and many have considered Kentucky the most beautiful place in North America.
I don't think Daniel Boone has to have like any reason to just do what he wants. Like he just does what he wants. You know, he doesn't need like justification.
Yeah, it says near the end of his life, Boone was described as naturally romantic and fond of the chase. At no point in his life did he fit that label better than in his first exploration of Kentucky. Among the many salt and sulfur licks Boone found in the limestone country was the famous Big Bone Lick near the Ohio, between future Cincinnati and the mouth of the Kentucky. So yeah, he finds all these licks. The caves of Kentucky are one of the most spectacular features of the region.
Caves of what? Kentucky?
Mm-hmm. Indians took shelter in them and explored them. There was covert passages over thousands of years. Animals lived in them. Underneath the surface of much of Kentucky, including some of the bluegrass area, conditions were perfect for cave formation, beginning with a water-soluble layer of limestone.
Yeah, bro. These caves are dope. They have like underwater systems.
Yep. Wild. That's
bro,
Kentucky.
You can get on a canal and go in a cave in Kentucky. That's insane.
Folks that are listening to this podcast, you might want to go look at the YouTube video, the video version of the show. Brent will throw up these pictures, but dude, that's wild. I mean, yeah, they talk about these caves a lot because Boone ends up hiding in caves a lot.
He's a caveman.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you get killed by Indians if you're not hiding in a cave, you know. You could start a fire in there and let it kind of wisp out as well. And
you could go a couple miles inside the cave, bro. You're fine. Like you can have a big fire. It don't gotta be small.
Yeah, it says with plenty of rainfall, runoff picked up carbon dioxide from the air and soil to make carbonic acid that seeped downward through the faults and crevices, eating away the rock to reach a base water level where pools and streams gathered. Rotting vegetation on the surface produced even more acid to cut away at the limestone.
Jeez.
Kentucky's wild, man. The pools and streams that collected underground made tubes and tunnels, draining toward river basins, creating gutters, a maze of abandoned drains. Because of the many colors of the salts and stone and underground chambers and corridors lit up like flower gardens, chapels, sculpture, salons, when a torch was brought into the whispering, dripping passages open onto one another like chains of buried memories, half-suppressed dreams.
They got a little flowery right there.
Yeah, I mean, it looks cool.
Suppressed dreams.
It looks cool with a torch. They could have just said that.
That's what I was thinking, because all those pictures, you go there now, yeah, there's like walkways and there's lights and stuff, but yeah, I was thinking like they'd be running that with a torch or something burning.
Check this out. There's bats, there's crickets, there's rats, there's turtles, there's salamanders. Those animals that came in and left the caves, there were permanent residents of the dark hallways, though, as well. And the alcoves and the grottos. What were those?
Bears.
White eyeless fish. I know you're going to Google it. Just go ahead.
My phone just died.
White eyeless fish, crayfish, flatworms, beetles, and spiders. Those are boring. But the eyeless fish, I'm curious about those. The water and the minerals made their own decorations, stalagmites and stalactites that resembled trees, statues, drapery. Colorful streaks called bacon festooned the walls. Other formations were called snowballs, gypsum.
Those formations are crazy looking, too.
Cave cotton and cave grass.
Cave cotton?
Mm-hmm. Some stalagmites were translucent as flesh. The shadow world of the caves was no less a wonderland than the landscape above. Boone lived in many caves and carved his initials on several, as did other white hunters.
I have a picture. The entire ceiling is just written with pioneers' names.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Indians before them had left their talismanic signs on the hidden surfaces. The caves were a refuge, a secret world, sanctuary for the wet and cold, the pursued and frightened. It was a land beneath the threshold of hunting and settlement, multiplying the mysteries that Kentucky offered. Several times during the summer of wandering, Boone saw Indians but hid before they spotted him. Of course, they may have been watching him and he never knew it. He built small cooking fires of dry wood that made little smoke, usually hidden by rocks or bark walls. He took care to construct to conceal the flames. Yeah, you don't want a light shining.
Mm-hmm.
Often he did without a fire and slept in a canebrake for safety. At the falls of the Ohio, where Louisville would later be built, he found a recently dead horse at the foot of the falls and saw the ruins of a chimney and cabin. It is possible the camp had been built by his former partner, John Finley, when he traded at the falls in 1752.
That's cool.
By now, John Finley's probably dead after he had returned to North Carolina, because this is 1770, 71, somewhere in there. But he doesn't know it. For all he knows, he's just kicking around and hanging out, and he's missing his old friend. It says, striking east from the Ohio, Boone traveled to the Kentucky River, about where Frankfort would later be. There, he said afterward, he saw an Indian on a log over the river fishing. This is an interesting story.
He's fishing?
Yeah.
With what?
He said he saw an Indian on a log over the river fishing. A log that was over the river, like just kind of out on a log, probably sticking out and just fishing off of it. It says, while I was looking at him, he tumbled into the river, and I saw no more of him, Boone reportedly told his son Nathan, implying that he had killed the Indian.
He took a tumble, huh?
It is one of the few incidents reported by Nathan that does not ring true. And though Isaac Boone, a cousin of Daniel's, said he heard the same story from Daniel in his later years, the anecdote sounds more like a punchline than a true incident. Shooting an unsuspecting Indian in cold blood is out of character with everything we know about Boone and his dealings with Indians. Of course, people sometimes act out of character, but it is hard to believe that the man who never retaliated against the Indians for torturing and killing his son James and killing his brother Ned would shoot. There you go, a little foreshadowing. It's hard to believe that having not retaliated for those murders, that he would shoot an Indian who had not harmed him at all and then brag about it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem right.
It was understood from the way in which he spoke of the story that he had not that he had shot and killed the Indian. Yet he seemed not to care about alluding more particularly to it, Nathan told Draper. Anyway, beyond the issue of Boone's own known character, there are the considerations of practicality and safety. A man nearly out of powder and lead, spying an Indian fishing, would almost certainly back away into the forest and save his ammunition until it was needed. I mean, you shoot that guy and 50 warriors.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Like I don't know. It doesn't sound right to me.
It doesn't sound right. And that's the thing. Is like if that Indian goes missing,
yeah,
the hunt's on.
And a shot would alert other Indians who might be hunting or fishing nearby. Boone's story makes it sound as though he shot the Indian on a whim. It seems likely it was a joke the old man liked to tell to entertain his visitors. He was also known, dude, that is the sort of thing that I know a lot of guys who would do that. They just lie to naive visitors just for the sake of enjoying the lie and how gullible they are. And then, yeah. He was also known to tell tales about encountering great hairy monsters like the Yahoos and Gulliver's Travels. Most likely it never happened. Boone didn't actually state that he killed the Indian fisherman. He let his listeners assume that's what he meant and was reluctant to say more. But Draper takes the story as fact and, to excuse the murder by calling it self-defense, says, quote, and it may have been the means of preserving his life for great future usefulness to his family and country. I killed him because he might have killed me.
Maybe.
but that's why. It was self-defense.
That fisherman needed to go down.
It's like, I killed the neighbor because someday he might have killed me. I don't know. Although an Indian in that territory is probably a little more risky than my neighbor. Probably. It depends on their political. Anyway, he says that he ignores the implausibility of the quip and its dry humor in the context when he wrote that, So anyway, we're getting into his solo time in Kentucky. It's pretty interesting. It says that on July 27, 1770, Squire Boone returned to Kentucky. With the money from the furs, Squire had paid some of Boone's debts and bought new supplies. So Squire made it back. He didn't die in the woods, and he was able to sell their bounty. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into that in the next episode. But there you have it. What do you think, man?
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah,
that was good. The story's really starting to pick up for me. I'm liking these Indian exchanges.
Yeah, I mean, it's an adventure. Like, you can put yourself in these shoes and be like, wow.
Have you ever eaten tongue before?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How'd you like it?
It's great.
I was really impressed. I had a tongue burrito a couple weeks ago.
It's great. Nothing wrong with some tongue burrito.
Mm-mm.
Look at all these pictures. You might want to grab them later, put them in the video version of the podcast here. But
that is
yeah, that's a fellow right there. Yeah. So anyway, hope you're all enjoying the series. We're gonna do once we get through this phase, we're gonna kind of jump ahead to a couple more phases in his life, like where they settled Boonesboro and how they basically built Boone's Trace or Boone's Trail. Or
I want to know
that
about
highway
that.
now.
Yeah, I think they still call it Boone's Trace.
Is it?
Yeah,
Boone's Trace Highway.
Yeah, you can find pictures where they have the old wooded, like you can see like where they cut through the trees, and then the road map superimposed over it. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're pretty deep into the book. I hope you're enjoying it. Like I said, if you want to support the author, Robert Morgan, you can check out this book. It's called Boone, a biography. But Robert Morgan has some other great books as well. So if you just want to support the author, go buy one of his other books. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I've read a bunch of his stuff. It's great. He does a great job. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate that you're here, that you're following along. Leave us a comment. We'd love to engage with you and hear from the community that's following along. And if you have any historical
corrections, keep them to yourself.
No, corrections or just interesting facts shoot
me facts. I'm all
drop
about
them into the comment section of the videos, and we'd love to read them there and maybe share them on the podcast as well. So thank you. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll catch you on the next one. Hello, friends. I hope you're enjoying our new Dueling Pistols podcast. Remember, it's only here temporarily on the Gritty channel.
Short time.
If you want to subscribe to the main show, head on over to our YouTube channel, Dueling Pistols, and subscribe over there. And anywhere that you get your podcast, you can subscribe there. Thanks for supporting us.
We're on all platforms.
Yeah, we're out there. Find it over there. And tell a friend.
Yeah.
Tell a friend about our new show.
Tell all your friends.
Help us grow it bigger.
We're just going to turn this to an ASMR.
All right. Thanks, guys. Catch you on the next episode.